In terms of, again, being his teammate, I got Will Perdue here on the Rich Eisen Show. You fought him, right? You had a fight with Jordan in a practice, correct?
Yes.
That's a true story.
So let me
what happened
clarify.
here?
We had a situation in practice, and that's what I mean the intensity. I mean, we got in arguments all the time, and I always clarify, listen, when you want to talk about the NBA, there's no such thing really as an NBA fight. Every once in a while, you saw what was truly a fight. But NBA fights are more like skirmishes. You push a guy, you get in the guy's face, you point a finger. NBA, a fight is described as, somebody steps in the middle and you're like, all right, now's my chance. You reach around a guy and throw a cheap shot because the other guy can't reach back at you because there's somebody in between you. But we had an episode in practice where we were running the high-frequency plays of our opponent, and I still to this day am pretty sure it was the Milwaukee Bucks. And the one thing we were trying to emphasize is that Milwaukee was going to continue to run Michael off a bunch of screens in the hopes that the last 6 minutes of the game, he'll be fatigued both mentally and physically, and will think twice about, hey, I'm really going to look to attack the hoop and maybe start settling for jump shots, and because he's fatigued, be a little short and not be able to get to the free throw line and get points there. So we kept running this one play where I was setting screens on him. Got pretty good shots, as they say in the day. I was laying some wood, and one time I hit him pretty hard. He bounced up off the floor, and he said, listen, you do that again, I'm going to punch you. He used a little more colorful language. Mm-hmm. So as soon as that happened, Johnny Bach, who was the assistant coach that set up our defensive schemes, immediately yelled, run it again. So I thought to myself, hey, man, if I'm going to get punched by this guy, which I still didn't think he was going to do it, I'm going to make sure I get my money's worth. So I made sure it was an illegal screen. I don't think I ever stopped. I just ran right through him. Knocked his ass to the ground. He got up and immediately just turned around and hauled off and swung at me. And I was able to duck just enough so he didn't get a square shot in the face, but kind of hit me across the side of the temple. But again, it wasn't like it turned into a debacle. Once I realized what happened, I kind of started to step towards him. Eddie Neely, who was on the team at the time, grabbed me from behind and just kind of said, oh, big boy, that's probably not a good idea. And then the other thing was we just, settled down, continued to practice. It wasn't like they separated practice and, oh, that's it, we're done. You guys got to go in a room and hash it out. We just kept practicing. That stuff happened a lot more than people think. Now, the actual punch, that wasn't didn't happen a lot. I know they're going to talk a lot about this upcoming week regarding Steve Kerr and MJ, but there were skirmishes all the time because you got to remember the guys on the second team, we were fighting against the guys in the first team trying to get more minutes, trying to replace those guys, trying to justify our position on a team. So the games for us, I don't want to say they were easy, but it was refreshing when we played games on those Bulls teams because of how competitive and how hard we went at it at practice.
Well, Perdue here on the Rich Eisen Show. Did you have to have that environment, you think, in order to win as much as you did? I mean, was it necessary for you to have that edge and potential anger and dislike? Will?
Well, the answer is no, because, as you pointed out, I got traded to San Antonio for Dennis and ended up winning a championship there, but they had a totally different culture, a totally different atmosphere. But yet you had that competitiveness. You didn't necessarily have that anger. You didn't necessarily have the aggressiveness. But that was Michael Jordan. That was led by Michael Jordan. That's how Michael Jordan approaches the game. And, I know a lot of people are getting that opportunity to see Michael, and apparently episodes 7 and 8 open up a lot of a big can of worms, because I know the producer has been out there talking about, I'm really surprised Michael allowed us to do 7 and 8 the way we did it, because apparently it doesn't paint a very good light against him. But guys that played with him, we understood him. It took a little while, but you adjusted and you understood. But at the end of the day, I always say, if you want to understand who Michael Jordan was, and if you want to know the definition of a hard ass, but a guy that wanted to win at all costs, go back and look at his Hall of Fame speech. That was Michael Jordan being thankful, thanking those that doubted him to help motivate him throughout his career.
Well, you know what, the speech that I prefer to because that's the one where, obviously the crying Jordan, but there were people who also took a lot of offenses to what he said. His speech at Kobe's memorial was beautiful, just a beautiful, touching tribute from the GOAT to somebody who looked up to Michael, and I think is the only one who's been, would it be fair to say, in his area code of competitiveness, of red ass, of that sort of Mamba mentality, right? Will, would you say?
Because you saw during his time, as once he became the man in L.A., because Kobe even admits that, when I first got there, I tried to be a man, but everybody remembers me as the guy shooting air balls against Utah in the playoffs.
Right.
But he eventually became Jordan-esque, not necessarily in his accomplishments, but as an attempt to follow in Michael's shoes, but also, as you talked about, the red-assness, the hardcore. I mean, how many guys came through the Lakers organization that he chewed up and spit out, that didn't get along with him, couldn't understand the mentality, weren't willing to make the sacrifices or play as hard, regardless of how good they were, and didn't last very long with the Lakers. He was very similar, and it was kind of interesting to hear him, talk about how he reached out, how Michael made the offer, and, how he referred to Michael as an older brother, and they got that. I think they got that part about him just in January of this year. And then to hear Michael talk about how he was a younger brother at, the memorial.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.